Hi, this is Polly from thefitmumformula.com, and today I want to talk to you about puddings and cakes and treats and what your expectations are of what you can have when you're trying to lose weight. Now, everybody loves cake and pudding and chocolate bars and things like that. I do as well. They're delicious, but of course we all know that they are quite high in calories and they're not the most nutritious of foods. They're best left as treats. So that leaves you with some options. So with the rise and popularity of things like paleo, clean eating, low carb, baking with protein powder, all that kind of thing, it's actually fairly easy these days to get hold of either pre-made, pre-packaged versions of sweet treats, things like protein bars, healthy brownies, cakes, even the food bloggers are bringing out their own ranges now, and the supermarkets are selling them. Alternatively, recipes online that you can make yourself. So, for example, sweet potato brownies, all sorts of things like that. But the problem is, what I'm hearing from you is that they don't taste like the real thing. Well, not being funny, but they're not going to really, because with the best will in the world, a banana, avocado, cocoa concoction is not going to taste the same as a Marks and Spencer's melt in the middle pudding. Now, this today is not a discussion about the health value necessarily of the foods, because some of these healthier alternatives can be higher in calorie than their regular alternatives, especially if they're full of healthy fats like nut butters, avocados and coconut oil, and they can be quite high in sugar as well if they're using things like dates and maple syrup. But that's not the point what I'm talking about today. Today I'm talking about their taste and whether you like them, whether you're going to eat them. So you've got all these healthy versions of things, but you're telling me they don't taste like the real thing, and no, they're not going to. So the other option you've got is quite a few brands, especially the ones that are more driven towards the fitness and bodybuilding world rather than the natural health and health blogger type clean eating world. There's lots of products you can get out there now that taste a lot more like the real thing, and the way they do this is they use things like artificial sweeteners, more refined, more processed ingredients, and so they're not so natural, but they are lower calorie, lower carb, sugar free, all of the things that you want from a healthier alternative. When you're trying to lose weight, you want all of these lower things and all the things that you need to be cutting back on, yes. So they do that by making it, but they do all that and then they make it taste pretty much like the real thing actually. But then what I hear from people who have either tried these or looked at the ingredients on them and looked at the labels, they said, yeah, but they're full of all this artificial nonsense stuff and I want something that's made of whole natural foods. So I go, okay, fair enough, you know, I'm not going to have a bias towards either of them. They've both got their place. I personally think that whole natural foods should make up the majority of your diet because they're a lot more nutritious, but I also think that these slightly more processed, slightly artificial occasionally things are not the end of the world, and they're certainly a fantastic compromise compared to a jumbo sized Mars bar, for example. I'd much rather have a Diet Coke with some artificial sweeteners or an artificially sweetened protein bar that's still giving me some protein, that's going to keep me full. And it's a lot healthier really still than something like a Mars bar. So they're a compromise. You wouldn't want to be having artificial everything all day long, but they're not the end of the world. But if that's your choice, that's fine. So we'll go back then to these really wholesome natural cakes and bars and things that are made of, as I said, sweet potatoes, avocados, fruit purees, coconut flour, egg whites, and all of these really nutritious, wholesome ingredients, and they're really good for you, and they are a chocolate brownie or a snack bar or whatever it is you're trying to make. And then I get but it doesn't taste as good as the real thing. So we're sort of going around in circles here. Can you see the problem? What you're wanting is something that tastes exactly the same as the real thing, but isn't. And we've got a problem there, because that, so far as I can see, isn't possible. The closest you can get to tasting to the real thing is going to have to be slightly processed, man-made, artificial, because that's how you can cheat the flavours and make it taste like the real thing without it being the real thing. So what I would say is you now have to make a decision. You have to really think about what it is you want, because you can't, excuse the cliche, necessarily have your cake and eat it in this sense. You can't tick all 3 boxes of it being tasting exactly like the real thing, the real unhealthy thing, being 100% pure and natural, homemade, all of that, and no artificial, no processed anything. Somewhere along the line there's going to have to be a compromise if you want to eat less sugar and trans fats and processed junk food. If you want to eat less of that, there's going to have to be a compromise somewhere. Now, what compromise you make, that's going to be up to you. You might prefer to have a mix of all 3, and overall, if you're reducing your calorie intake, that's going to result in weight loss if you're consuming less than you're burning. But really, beyond that, it's totally up to how you do it. I personally have a really sweet tooth, and I really like sweet, treaty things, so I would much rather have a protein bar that tastes a chocolate flavoured protein bar in the afternoon than I would, say, a handful of plain salted nuts or something, because that's just me. And if I had to eliminate all sweet things and all chocolate out of my diet, I'd be miserable. That would not be worth it for me. So, but I do have members, and I do have mums in my group who really are not keen on these compromised versions, whether it's the more artificial ones or the natural ones. They would prefer during the week, for example, to snack on things like leftover chicken, carrot sticks, hummus, whole almonds, really whole, natural, wholesome, healthy foods, but then once a week they will have a piece of chocolate fudge cake or whatever it is, their choice of treat, and they will have the real thing, but they're having it in a smaller portion a lot less often, and that's fine too. But you can't have it always, because you can't have something that's really super healthy that tastes exactly the same as the unhealthy version. Now, that's not to say that they're not really delicious and tasty and really yummy as an alternative. And personally, I think some of these healthier alternatives actually taste better than the real thing, especially when you get used to them. Something like a Mars bar is so sickly, artificially junky tasting to me personally, whereas a really fudgy, wholesome avocado chocolate brownie, even if it's full of loads of calories because it's still got all that avocado in, to me tastes better, but it doesn't taste the same as the real thing. It's not, some of them are worse, some of them are better, but they're not going to taste the same because they're not the same. So if you've been chasing this and been frustrated that you're either restricting everything that you enjoy because you're having to go for these middle ground things that you don't really like, you might be better off just not having them at all, but then once a week, just occasionally having a smaller amount of the real thing. Alternatively, if like me, then you really enjoy having things like that and you're happy to compromise somewhere and have something a little bit different, then try some of the other things. Try some of the really natural things, or if you want to, try some of the slightly more treaty things. The odd artificial sweetener is perfectly safe in normal amounts if you want to have them occasionally. So it's up to you. You've got choices. At the end of the day, if you're reducing your calories to less than you're burning, you will lose weight. And how you achieve that calorie deficit, the main point is, can you stick to it? And if whatever you're eating you're unhappy with, you're not going to stick to it. So within everything I've talked about today, see what works for you best, see what you can stick to, and if you enjoy it and if you can stick to it long term, that's the way to go for you. I hope that's been helpful for you. If you liked this video, please do share it or tag somebody below. And enjoy your food, everybody, whether that's sweet treats, cakes, puddings, healthy, unhealthy. At the end of the day, there's a place for all of it, so enjoy. I hope that was useful for you. That's Polly from thefitmumformula.com.